To all my marketers out there, you're probably spread real thin right now. I'm sure you need some help between creating content, launching campaigns, generating leads, scoring leads, nurturing leads, and a lot more stuff with leads. You barely have a moment to breathe, let alone do your best marketing. But that's where HubSpot and Breeze, its new built-in AI, come in. When you combine the power of Marketing Hub and Content Hub, you can have your best quarter, every single time. With tools that instantly remix your content, lead scoring to shine a light on potential customers, and AI-curated analytics suite for reports and KPIs. And that's all alongside co-pilots and agents to automate all of your tasks, making your life easier, getting you the results faster, and better connecting you to all your data all in one place. Doesn't that sound nice? So stop spreading yourself so thin and start making major moves with HubSpot. You can visit HubSpot.com/marketers to learn more.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, January 29th. I'm Mark Dent here with Rob Litterst, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. Over at Starbucks, what's old is new again. Roughly 6 months into the tenure of CEO Brian Niccol, the world's largest coffee chain is trying to reclaim its old mantle as a third-place hangout, and it has just announced a few small changes in its stores that it hopes is going to make a really big difference. So we're going to get into all of that, but before we do, let's give you the hits and headlines in tech news. Starting off with AI, because I feel like we're just doing that all the time now. It's certainly been a spicy week for it because the fallout from China's DeepSeek AI has continued through Tuesday. As you probably remember, DeepSeek announced that it spent just a few $1 million to build its AI model, which is far less than the hundreds of millions, maybe even billions, spent by US companies. And so on Monday, the stock market plunged. But on Tuesday, plenty of investors bought the dip, sending NVIDIA's stock back up about 7%. The NASDAQ was up 2%. The S&P was up 1%. However, that's probably not going to be the end of this story. DeepSeek technology is not going anywhere. As the Wall Street Journal revealed, it built its model using below average, inexpensive computer chips. And now it's up to the Trump administration to decide what type of access it will give China regarding chips over the next few months. So that's going to be a story to keep paying attention to. Let's stick with AI for one more. OpenAI announced ChatGPT Gov, which is a new product designed for US government agencies to use for sensitive information. Over 90,000 government employees have generated 18 million ChatGPT prompts since 2024, according to OpenAI, but security has always been a top concern for them. Moving on to the auto industry. Fancy people keep on buying fancy cars. Sales of vehicles that cost $80,000 plus increased 37% in December compared to the prior year, according to Kelley Blue Book data. This category includes cars like the Land Rover Range Rover, the Cadillac Escalade, and Tesla's very new, very popular Cybertruck. Rob, are you a fancy car aficionado?
I'm not a fancy car guy, but I have a theory around this trend. I think back in the day, I feel like there were more luxury items across the rest of our life that were interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like going out to like super fancy restaurants, buying super fancy clothes. I think a lot of those fancy consumer products have gone away, or at least the market has shrunk a lot. My first job out of college was at Neiman Marcus, kind of like the peak of luxury department stores. And they've shut down like half their stores. I think in this new age where people love athleisure and like there are all of these kind of like clothing and food options, the baseline is getting a lot higher. I feel like there are just not a lot of opportunities to spend a lot of money on really nice things.
So therefore, they do it on cars?
There it is. Cars and houses. I think it's cars and houses.
And houses in part because they have to, since everything's getting so expensive.
Exactly.
And that's also in part because other things that used to be extravagances, like electronics, say in the 80s, were very expensive. They are not expensive anymore.
Totally.
All right, switching over to crime, actually. You may not know this, but America has a digital shoplifting problem, especially with wealthy young customers. In a survey from Secure, 55% of Gen Zers who earn $100,000 or more per year said they've stolen from online merchants in the last year. Millennials, by the way, are right around the same amount, with 49% saying that they've stolen digital goods. And if you're not one of those thieves, you might be wondering, how do you do that? Because you can't just grab it from the shelf and carry it out of the store. So what they're doing is claiming that a package was never delivered, or they're falsely disputing a credit card charge. Yeah. Rob, what do you make of this trend?
I think this is sociopathic. I think this is crazy. The reason that things work is because of public trust. I think this is just taking advantage of Amazon's policies. I don't know how people live with themselves if they're doing this stuff. Stealing from people is just wrong, Mark. That's how I feel about it. Even if it's stealing from a company.
I agree with you as well. A lot of people don't. I mean, according to the same poll, Gen Zers, about 46% of them see these actions as consumer advocacy. So it's, quite opposite from believing in order and all that.
Yeah, I don't understand the argument. I think you can tell yourselves all sorts of things, but at the root of it, you're taking something and you're not paying for it. And that, my friend, is stealing.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Litterst. All right, we're going to close off the snippets with some really bad news for everyone. Sorry about this, but the American dream just might be dead. That's at least if you ask today's Americans whether they believe that if you work hard, you'll get ahead here. Only 27% of Americans say that adage still holds true, which is down from 50% in 2010, according to an ABC News and Ipsos poll.
Do you think this is true? Do you think there's something to it?
I do. I definitely do. I wouldn't go so far as to say the American dream is dead. I don't think I would 100% agree or disagree with that statement. If you work hard, you'll get ahead here. I think in general, you still can, but I think it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a guarantee. And whereas I think 40 years ago, even if it wasn't a guarantee, I think people thought, at least felt like it was probably a better chance.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I don't think the American dream is dead, but I do think it's harder. Things have gotten really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're looking at this from the context of somebody who's immigrating to the United States, where they would need to live to get work, like you're usually going to be in a populated area where the housing market is probably up right now.
Yeah, it's up everywhere.
So yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. I've been listening to this awesome podcast lately. It's called Nudge, hosted by Phil Agnew. It's brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. So have you ever noticed how the smallest changes can have the biggest impact? On Nudge, you learn simple, evidence-based tips to help you kick bad habits, get that raise, and grow a business. Every bite-sized 20-minute show comes packed with practical advice from admired entrepreneurs and behavioral scientists alike. And Nudge is fast-paced, but still insightful with real-world examples that you can actually apply. Oh, and by the way, it's the UK's fastest-growing business podcast. I was listening to an episode recently that Phil, the host, had on Harvard professor Mike Norton, and Mike convinced Phil that he had to handwrite every single one of his emails before sending them to understand what he was really trying to talk about. This process, although it sounds insane, he claims, Phil, that it made his emails 3.5 times better. You got to listen to this podcast. It's a great way to understand how email marketing can help your business. You can listen to Nudge wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, let's move on to the main story now, because I think one big part of the American dream has always been able to get a latte every day.
Yes.
And so therefore we have Starbucks, which hadn't been doing that well. But then last August, Starbucks hired former Chipotle boss and turnaround whiz Brian Niccol as CEO. And just under 6 months later, they're having a glow up. You're going to probably start noticing a few changes at your local Starbucks. They're hoping these new initiatives are going to make its stores feel more homey and just kind of like the old days. I think they're really pining for nostalgia. They're pining for 2012, just like a lot of us millennials. But Rob, what are some of these changes that Starbucks has been deciding to trot out so far this year?
Yeah, so Starbucks is rolling out condiments bars so that customers can add milk and sugar and anything else that they might want to spice up their coffee with on their own.
Yeah.
There are going to be no more free restrooms or free loitering. You have to buy something if you're there. Which, just sidebar on that, back in the day when I was studying, or if I'm just going there to do some work or something like that, I always buy something. It's just kind of part of it.
Same. Yeah, I mean, sometimes if I'm commuting somewhere and I have to stop at a Starbucks on the way or something to get some work done, I'll even buy something. I don't even always drink it, which is maybe a waste.
Yeah.
So, don't get me wrong, but I still feel like I have to spend $2,
Yeah, it feels right. Mark, I think what we're learning is that we're old school.
I know.
When we go to a coffee shop, even if we don't want something, we're going to buy something because we feel like we have to. Call us old fashioned.
Yeah.
So ceramic mug gets free coffee refills for everyone, not just rewards members, which that's actually pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Though if you're going to Starbucks frequently, I would think that you should just be a rewards member. I think they're pretty generous with their rewards points.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is the most important one. Baristas will write names in Sharpies again. So they will misspell your name in permanent marker.
I think that one is so important.
Yeah.
I had kind of forgotten that they didn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
The Sharpie is such a better touch. And I mean, all of these touches, none of them are new. This is how Starbucks used to be. There was a condiments bar before the pandemic, right? You didn't have to be a member to get the free coffee refill with a ceramic mug. And obviously until 2017, 2018 or so, you also had to buy something and it wasn't just free to go there and hang out. And Starbucks is doing this because they've been struggling. Last quarter, for instance, at all stores that had been open for at least a year, sales were down 7%. The stock has been faltering for the most part over the last year, if not for a little bump accompanying the hiring of Brian Niccol as CEO. And baristas, they're feeling overworked at Starbucks because of all these to-go orders and the way everything has changed. So it's just really been a time of turmoil for Starbucks. And I think they're just leaning into this. It's almost like a nostalgic feel, like a return to its roots,
I dig it, honestly. And I think that that's kind of the play. And one note that I wanted to mention on the Sharpies, Mark, they're procuring 200,000 of them.
That's a lot of Sharpies.
That sounds like a lot, but Starbucks has like 40,000 locations. So that's 5 Sharpies per location.
I feel like they should almost double that then.
Same. They have so many employees. Like there's no chance they're going to become like these prized possessions. They better have like a special cup or something where they put them.
Yeah, seriously.
But I totally agree. I think going back to their roots is smart. I definitely feel like Starbucks has become super, super corporate.
Yeah.
And I've heard people comparing it to McDonald's. Basically, the Starbucks is McDonald's for coffee, which I don't think is off base. I look at Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and I think that they have like different tasting coffee, but I don't think they're that different. I think Starbucks is kind of a more refined aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. But I think Starbucks has kind of fallen into this sort of limbo. Is it McDonald's or is it like a nice coffee shop you want to go sit at?
Yeah.
They're in between that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they've had problems because their coffee is still as expensive as a local coffee shop, which has a much more comfortable, inviting atmosphere to it than the Starbucks of the last few years. I think they've decided clearly to pivot toward that more luxury, let's be a nice place kind of lane.
Yeah.
Our former colleague, Trung Phan, actually had a really good newsletter on this, I think, a few months ago. And he suggested that Starbucks' choice was either to do what they've ended up doing or to pivot to the McDonald's idea and essentially truly become the McDonald's for coffee and have cheaper drinks and you just go and get them and then you get out.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure which path is better. Obviously, Starbucks is attempting the path to be more luxury and get people back into the store. The question is just, is that going to work?
Yeah.
Do people want to go back into the Starbucks? I don't know.
So there are 2 things that I think about with Starbucks. One is remote work. I used to go to Starbucks when I was going into the city much more often than I do now. Now I just make my own coffee. But when I was going into the city for work, I didn't have time to do that because I had to get on the train for my commute and would ultimately buy coffee either on the way or when I got into the city. The other one is just these kind of like neighborhood coffee shops, which I think as much as Starbucks wants to go back to its roots and wants to resonate with its customers and become that kind of third place, there's always going to be this gap between Starbucks and like the true kind of neighborhood coffee spot that like is kind of embedded in a community.
Yeah.
I think there's a different value that you get from going to like the local coffee shop. So I'm curious to see what they do. Like on one hand, I kind of see the McDonald's play.
Yeah.
I think bringing their prices down and making that more of a value prop would be interesting, but it contrasts so hard with kind of where they came from.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if returning to roots works for Starbucks. That's going to do it for us today. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We have a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. So if you're not subscribed, please go get signed up at thehustle.co/email. And if you really, really like us, then you got to follow us on Instagram at The Hustle Daily. And we will catch you tomorrow.
New year, new resolutions. And this year on the Best Idea Yet podcast, we're revealing the untold origin stories of the products you're obsessed with. And we promise you have never heard these before.
Ever wonder how the iconic Reese's peanut butter cup was invented? Because it was by accident.
H.B. Reese, a former frog salesman,
True story,
stumbled upon the idea after accidentally burning a batch of peanuts. Classic. Proving that sometimes our best ideas arise from what seem like our biggest mistakes.
And Jack, did you know there's a scientific explanation why humans crave that surprising combo of peanut butter and chocolate?
I didn't, but it sounds delicious.
It is delicious.
So, if you're looking to get inspired and creative this year, tune in to The Best Idea Yet. You can find us on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you're looking for more podcasts to help you start this year off right, check out New Year, New Mindset on the Wondery app. Who knows? Your next great idea could be an accident that you burned. This is Nick.
And this is Jack.
And we'll see you on The Best Idea Yet.